Hello, hello, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. While everybody is joining the call, please feel free to put your location on the chat so we can greet each other from wherever you're located. Let me change the webcam and we're good to start. Yep. So good afternoon, evening, morning, whatever it is. Good day, everybody. And thank you for joining us for this pretty interesting topic about how we can summarize a dense book or article using a mind map. Before we dive into that, couple of words about who I am. I'm French, and some of you might have noticed already. My name is Eric Bouchet. I noticed there were some French people as well in the webinar today. Interesting point is I usually don't do things in English because my job now is Outinum, which is the name of my company, is to take information, tools, ideas in English and bring them to French-speaking people. So today is kind of an exception. I happen to be an ambassador on some other software topics like Evernote, Xmind, or Todoist. I've been an Xmind ambassador since 2016, and I've also translated a couple of books from English into French, one of which we'll talk about later, which is Perfect Time-Based Productivity, which I put into mind maps as well. On the top left, talk about mind maps and me. I did my first mind map in 1988, and interestingly enough, it was not on paper, it was on software, thanks to my friend Emily Shirley, who introduced me to Mind Manager. So I started mind mapping with software, then moved into the pen and paper ones, and I've been using mind maps with Xmind since 2014 and sharing them onto Bigger Plate and the Xmind website as well. We'll talk about sharing mind maps later when we talk about our summaries. So the topic for today is how we can summarize a dense book or article into a mind map. We're going to be exploring 6 steps in doing so. First one will be, sorry for that, reading. There's no escape in that. Somebody has to read the content before you can translate it into something that you can share. The second step will be putting the structure into the map, and we talk about that. Clean up, then you correct the content back to the book and make sure you've got everything you need. The makeup, which is where pretty much you transform a bare-bone content into a full-fledged mind map with all of the mind map's attributes, and then what you do with your map. Which lends me to the very first question I would have to ask, and if you might want to share that into the chat, which is how you prefer to read your mind maps. If you'd rather go for a full page as this one that you can print and read later, or if you're happier with a map that you can explore in depth and there are pluses and minuses and you can go into deep detail and explore. So if you want to answer that in the chat, I'll be happy. We'll talk about that later. So let me check what we have in the chat. Yep, so please put in the chat how you prefer to read your mind maps. If it's like full page that you could print, or if it's a complete mind map that you can dive into and have a lot of details. And welcome Elmano from Italy, and welcome Cécile from France. So Céline, sorry. So Céline is telling us both ways. Got Anthony coming as well. Both for Emano too. Complete map, but I want to start using the full page view. For Anthony, we'll talk about that. More detailed maps, even if I must add some branches from Martin. And hello from Bamako. Hello from Grenoble, where I'm located. Okay, so we'll talk about what we can do with these maps and how you can make sure you have the right setup for this. So once we go into the details, first step, read. That's the bad news. Sorry for that. Somebody has to read the full content because that's the way you're going to be doing the summary. The one thing is you can do it the way you want. You can start from the cover, from the table of contents, from the content itself. You can do it with or without a pen. It doesn't really matter. The point is you get used to what's inside. So then you can translate it into the map. There's no secret and no magic into that. That's the second step that's going to become interesting, is how you structure this map. And for instance, going into the chapters, the sections of the book, one good example is that one, time power. you can see, from Brian Tracy, which is probably one of the first books that I translated into a mind map. And indeed, what I did is go through each of the chapters of the book, and in there you can see there are several topics. So I put that into the structure of the book. That was the very first unreadable mind map I did of time power, where you basically find each of the chapters and each of the high level sections of the book. That was my very first time starting point of time power. So we're into step 2, is really putting the structure into the mind maps. At this stage, it does not look like a proper mind map, but at least we got everything ready. If I take another example, this is an article I got from the Coda website. Coda is a note-taking collaborative application. And Lane Shackleton did a series of articles about principles of great product teams. And in fact, these are several articles, several principles. There are 4 for the time being. He's going to go into 7. And I thought that that would be interesting for me to have a summary of these. So I went into mind mapping and put that into perspective. So I've got the big title here, and then each of the principles, 1 to 4, that's the ones that exist today, I put into a mind map. And so we are in the 2+ level of the structure. There are already some nice things coming. There are already some illustrations, some of the text. We talk about that later, but it's really, for the time being, put in the structure. And if you're looking into the basics of mind maps, there is way too much text right now to make it readable and useful. So that's the part about the cleanup, number 3, where we're going to transform this big chunk of information, sentences, topics, into something that you can really use. And we're going to be using some of the basics of mind mapping, like, for instance, using 1 word per line, cutting the sentences into words, into ideas, and that's where you're going to make a choice whether it's going to be one big single map or whether you do what I call a multi-map, like a table of content and multiple ones. If I go back to my example here of the 7 principles of great product team, we've got way for improvement here. As you can see, common issues, there are things that are all related to the same review meeting. So we could decide to cut that into pieces and make it more consistent. Oh, sorry. Seems I've lost audio. If you don't hear me correctly, do know. Hope it's back. Any issue with the sound, do let me know. Let me check that again. Hop. Seems to be okay. So if you don't hear me correctly, please shout. So where we were into simplifying this and translating it into something more readable. So review meeting takes too long to schedule. Let's make it into 2 lines. So I basically select the text here, cut and paste, and already as a starting point, I've got my 2 topics, which I know I'm going to be talking about the review meeting, then I've got some things about the review meeting. So let's do it again here. Start with the wrong attendees. I'm going to be cutting, Control X and pasting, Control V, and it can go into the same. And the last one here, start without clear. Up, there we go. And there's even one here copied by highest paid person in the room. In the meantime, that's a very interesting article. So here we start to have something which is a bit more readable already, like the review meeting is a common issue and it has a number of subtopics. We could even push the envelope in there. We got 2 starts. So if we want to look into the review meeting start, we could do it this way even. So we have something which is even clearer. So my common issues, review meeting, takes too long, start with wrong attendees without clear chat context and is co-opted, etc. So that's one example, sorry, we were there, about what it means to cut sentences into words, have less words, we could review the way, and then we're going to be talking about the last one, which is making the choice. Is it going to be a big map or a multi-map? That one, for the time being, is a one single map on one page. I could say that, for instance, this bit here is a bit long, and I could decide to put it in another map, which is what I did for the book we're talking about earlier, which is Time Power from Brian Tracy. I did it this way. So that's a multi-map in the way that the first page of the mind map is just the table of content. And then each chapter is into a specific section. So you see here, I've got all my chapters that are available, or there's even a nice link that you have in Xmind where you can just click here and it will open the chapter. So here the goal for me was to have each chapter into a readable map that I could print, and we'll talk about that later. And that's the choice I propose you make at step 3, because then it opens possibilities for step 4 or 5 to do things differently. Especially at step 5, we're going to be talking about adding things. You need space for that. So if you decide to keep a big map, that might be difficult to add. The multi-map will give you more space to add information. So we go into step 4 now. Step 4 is about correcting the content. 1, 2, 3, we've been reading the book, understanding and putting together the structure of it into a mind map, and then making that rough content into something that does start to look like a mind map. Then we go back to the content, compare what you've got to the book, add details where it makes sense, remove elements, and start structuring as well your content. So back to Time Power, that's where I would take back all of the chapters and look into what's the starting point of success. And Brian Tracy's got a number of ideas, etc., etc. So really to take all of these, go back to the book. I try to be as faithful to the book's words as possible as well. So really take back the content that is in the book, but put it in a way that it's practical and it's usable as a mind map. So you've got the ideas of single word as much as possible, and then focus on everything. So that's what the correct phase will look like. Then we enter the graphical part of making it a mind map, the makeup phase, where you find all of the standard components of a mind map: colors, icons, illustrations, sections, callouts, links, and obviously you're going to be careful as well of balancing your map correctly. Before we dive into that, let me ask you a new question. Where for your mind maps? Let me go there. So the question is where you usually find illustrations for your mind maps. And again, you can put the answer on the chat. And in the meantime, I'm going to go back to that one. General Google search for Martin. Yes, that's definitely one possibility. Any other ideas? So let me show you a couple other possibilities. Besides Google searches, you might also want to go into generic icon libraries. There are a number of them. Pretty much aware of where to find pictures, photos, but there are also a number of libraries for icons specifically. Things like FreePic that can provide icons. There are a number of others you can refer to. One possibility as a starting point from your source data exactly, that's the other place where you can go to. And let me show you on that article specifically. So the illustrations we've got here are actually directly coming from the articles themselves. And I removed one here just to show you how I did it. So sorry. For some reason, it seems my microphone keeps going out. So learning by making, not talking, I did not keep the illustration. So as Sissoko was referring, you can just take this image, copy and paste into your mind map, which is just Control V, and that will take the image straight into your mind map. So that's one possibility. In each case, we're going to be talking about that when we talk about sharing. Always be careful with copyright, obviously. You might not have the right to images found on Google search or images from the original. So any picture you take before, be careful that you have the right to use them, and especially if you want to share your mind map. This said, if it's for your own consumption, that's one way you can do it, and it helps with in keeping in mind what was in the article. There is another way you can do that, which is totally embedded into Xmind, which is just here, insert, sticker, or illustration. And here you will find Xmind's library of stickers that you can just simply put into your mind map, in small or big ones. And it's simple as drag and drop, or just click, and it will add the illustration in there. So that's one simple thing you can just do to add illustrations. Having said that, icons or illustrations was just one part of the makeup. I mentioned colors, I mentioned sections, links, and be careful with the balance of the map. So a couple of examples of what this means here. Back to Brian Tracy's Time Power, you got a good example here of one of the chapters where you have icons, not everywhere, but there are some icons, callouts, you have summaries in there as well, you've got numbers, and you've got color. So all nitty-gritties, and by the way, the colors were especially useful for me when doing this mind map, as they were like the main topics for each of the chapters, and I used them next to produce one single simple mind map, which was the nuggets from Time Power. So I just one map where everything was important. So I used the callouts in there to identify which were the topics. You'll see as well that there is some consistency in the icons that I use. That's something also important that you may want to keep in mind, is to create or to be aware of the consistency for your mind map. Let me show you another one, which is Francis Waite's Perfect Time-Based Productivity. And here you've got another set of icons. And the way I did it at the beginning was to research actually which icons I wanted to use for that mind map. So I've been through my libraries of icons and select the ones that would be consistent with the topic and would be consistent between each others, so that the look of the mind map is okay. And that's how I ended up with this one, where everything is consistent. We mentioned earlier, you can take the picture from the article itself. That's a dense mind map from a dense article, which is really, really interesting about the psychology of pricing. And each illustration is from the article. So it's all the examples of what prices you can put. Definitely, that's not one map you can print. You'd rather read it and make it bigger so that it's useful. But typically here, the illustrations are coming straight from the article itself. And the last example about what you can do with colors and illustrations, that's a book called Presenting with Pizzas. There's a lot of very good information in there too. And here I played with colors for each of the chapters, and illustrations as well were all taken from the same icon bank. So there is consistency in the way it looks. So back to that chapter 5, this is what will make your mind map stand out, is that you really treat that content not like a book, but like a mind map. and you can take all of the essentials of what makes a mind map great for you to read and potentially for the others to share. Moving on, topic number 6, which is usage. What you do with your mind maps. And I've got question number 3 for you, which is how you usually share your mind maps. Do you produce for you? Do you share them electronically with colleagues, with other people? Do you print them? Do you put them online on libraries like Bigger Plate or Xmind? I mean, all of these are possibilities, and I'm interested to know how you usually do it. And you'll see why later, because it has as well impact on how we do that. So Anthony, with your clients during coaching sessions, okay. Produce a PDF. Okay, Martin. So can it be like a multi-page PDF, or is it usually a one-pager? Usually one page. Then some app will be for you only. Okay, thank you. You put in your scientific papers. Okay, so directly into there. Okay, thank you for that. The reason I'm asking, obviously, is the way you use it will also impact what you do with it. If I go back to illustrations as an example, if you put a photo or an illustration that is protected by copyright, you better use it for yourself only. If you want to share to other people, you better make sure you have the right to share with the proper illustrations. Either it's Creative Commons Zero or you bought the illustrations yourself, which you can do as well. But that's going to be something you have to think of. The other reason why this question of sharing is important is how easy it will be for other people to understand. We pretty much used to reading mind maps clockwise, so from number 1 here on that one to number 6, but that's a convention that many people might not have if you did not explain to them. So there might be stuff to do as well to help people get into the mind map you produced, because each thing we do is with our own mind, and other people's mind might work differently. So that's why it's important when you think about the usage to think back about what will happen with that summary I did. Is it a summary for me to work? So it could be like you want to reread the book and that's a way to reread it. Is it to study? Is it to share with other people? And in what way? Is it a PDF or is it the original Xmind? I put together again some examples of what it gives. I mean, like that one to start with is the PDF version of the map. So I did, and I wanted to have a simple one, so I did it in PDF. If I go back to where we are here, Time Power as a PDF, it's a 14-page PDF that you can print and read. It does work pretty well. Each chapter, as I said, because that was the goal, is neatly structured into its own page, and you can easily print and reread at your leisure time and even annotate if you want to. By the way, on Time Power, there's one page on credits, which was important as well. In there, I put all links to the icons as an example. So that's one possibility. Presenting with pizzas is a one-pager, so everything fits into that page. On my screen and on yours, it might be a bit difficult to read, but you can easily print it either A3 or even A4 or A4 and A3, and you could have it completely done in there. And then perfect time-based productivity is a 4-pager The difference with Time Power, for instance, is there are just some topics for which I decided to do a summary. So it's a mix of a lot of information on the first page and then some deep dive onto some topics, actually two of them, the 7 essential fundamentals and the 7 advanced fundamentals, the 4. So you have here one summary of the other two, and then the credits are also on a separate page. So these are PDFs. These maps are also available for sharing online. So we talked about that earlier. There are different places where you can share. One, which is the very own Xmind website, where I've shared a number of maps, and you'll find those we've been talking about today. The other one, which is Bigger Plate, so that's the worldwide repository for mind maps that everybody can contribute to. Again, you'll find things like we talked about, like presenting with pizzas, and the very own map we've been using today on that very own topic, how to summarize Aiden's book. You'll find it on Bigger Plate too. So all of these are available for people to read, comment, and reuse if they want to. So that topic on sharing, and that will be, or usage, sorry, will be used to decide what you want to do with your map once you've done your book summary. To that point, we're pretty straight on time, half an hour, and I'm open for questions on that one topic, mind maps in general, my usage of Xmind, whatever might be of interest for you. Any views on whether advantages in using the books in electronic form, for instance, Kindle or paper? Thank you. That's a very good question. One thing I like when I do the mind map is I have the book next to me, whatever form it is. If I take the example of presenting with pizzas, that was actually a PDF that I had printed. Sorry for that. So I was reading the PDF, but you could imagine having the PDF next to you on one screen and the mind map or on the other one, or your Kindle with you and your computer next to you to do that. The one thing I pretty much like with paper is it's easier to go back to the table of content or to each of the chapters, but obviously there's no reason you can't do it with the electronic format. It's just going to be slightly different. So yes, I mean, both could work. And let me know in the chat if that answers your question, Martin. In the meantime, I'm going to be answering Céline, who is asking comment rendre une mind map lisible quand on l'imprime. So how to make your mind map readable when you print it. It really goes down to how big it is originally. That's why I'm very careful of not putting too much information in a map if I want to make it readable on PDF. The one you have on screen, for instance, it's pretty, there's not so much, so it does work. If I take the example back of presenting with pizzas, that one's already a stretch in a PDF. I mean, text might be too small. So the one thing for me to be careful if you absolutely want to print it is not putting too much information into it so that it remains readable. Then inside Xmind, it's as simple as save as PDF. So let me go back to one Xmind screen and let me show you. Up. So in there, you will have the export as PDF or print one way or another. Sorry. That's a good example of a map which might be too big. So here you can say, I want the current map, and not the outliner, and it would just take the current map as it is. I see there's another point from Martin. Question of personal choice, yes, for transforming, yes. However, the note and highlighting features in Kindle might be useful. Exactly, if you go back to the step, so let me go back to that one. If you go back to step number 4, which is correction, where I talk about adding details, yes, indeed, your Kindle highlights will be extremely useful at that very step, where you can really go back to highlights and make sure that all of them are into the mind map. So yes, you can imagine having the table of content and all the structure in step 2 done from there. You do your starting point, and then you could go back into the highlights and the notes and use them into the step 4 of the correction. Absolutely. Is there any other question? So that's going to be a question for Crystal. Quelles sont les prochaines fonctions sur lesquelles Xmind travaille? What are the next features coming into Xmind? So that's probably more a question for Crystal. What I've seen recently is things about task management already that's coming from to Xmind. And I know my colleague Philip Bukodza has been doing a full webinar onto the AI feature into Xmind Copilot. So there are two things. And Céline, when we talk about task, it's pretty light task management that you can identify the tasks and you can identify where they are. It's not as complete as we have in Xmind 8 Pro, for instance. So it's not like linking with other task management systems, but it's already pretty useful if you want to use your mind map like for weekly tasks, for instance. And Crystal, please let me know if I missed something. That's at least what I understand for the time being. So thank you, Martin, for your comments. Thank you, everybody, for your time today, your questions, and your comments as well on the polls. And I wish you a very pleasant evening, afternoon, day, wherever you are in the world. Thank you very much.